Poverty in the world. Hi guys, my name is Rayola Perez. I am a college student. I am 22 years old. I am from Oaxaca. Oaxaca is beautiful and perfect to live. If you come to Oaxaca, you can try tlayudas, mole, and chocolate to enjoy with family and friends. Well, in this video I am going to talk about poverty in the world. It is a problem that is difficult to talk about, but it must be done. Before I begin, I want to recite a poem by Hildebrando Rodriguez entitled Poverty. Poverty. Poverty is a condition that often worries us because our minds are busy looking for solutions. It keeps raising our gaze to heaven to ask for consolation to help us get out of that way of living that causes a lot of sleeplessness. When we talk about poverty, we think of the material that makes us live poorly and causes a lot of sadness. Let's fight with integrity and with a lot of decisions, changing the situation that interests us all, because progress is always made when reasons prevail. I have no reasons to doubt that the sustained effort that leads to failure is maintained in life. But we must fight and improve conditions with application of reason, our justice and progress to achieve the triumph of our gifts without stumbling. Let's not blame fate if we live in poverty, because life is wicked if it's our tool world. When I just imagine that I should progress, but I don't want to start doing the task. Things get ugly and I'm not going to change it. Nothing that is stable manages to change suddenly, only something that does not seem likely comes along. Think that what is desirable arises based on the truth, and seek prosperity to continue sponsoring it. It is something that is actually covering the need. Because the world has poverty. The poverty has many dimensions, but its causes are the unemployed, social exclusion, and the high vulnerability of certain populations to disaster, diseases, and other phenomena that they impede be productive. We don't decide where to be born, maybe it's luck or destiny. Each country has its different ways of seeing life. Global poverty is one of the very worst problems that the world faces today. The poorest in the world are often hungry, have much less access to education, regularly have no light at night, and suffer from much poorer health. The world is poor because we need equality at the moment when we really see ourselves the same and we eradicate those titles of social class. We will be able to put aside our poverty. What is the meaning of poverty? This is interesting because we can see that in many ways the meaning of being in poverty. I am going to talk about economic income, and this is where we talk about how to live. For example, if you earn $1 a day or $10, it makes a difference because based on this you can buy food, clothes, products, pay for housework, and keep your family safe. Monetary income is a reason that some people feel very important in society, but it should not be so. Be poor not meaning that you can't buy new clothes because you can be poor as a person because of your mentality. Delete state. Poverty is not limited to one dimension, such as entry manifests itself in all dimensions of life as the housing, education, and health. 1992. Poverty is a relative concept. That is, poverty is what each person conceives as such, but even with the existing freedom on the idea that we can have of it, there are components that we cannot ignore its identification. So, in order to have a definition of poverty, and how much in it to determine it numerically, there must be a criterion that allows defining who must be in the center of interest. How poverty is measured. Interesting, because I think everyone thinks that poverty is only measured by the economy, but it can also be measured socially. Measuring poverty at the local level is straightforward. At the national level, it is hard but manageable, and at the level of the world as a whole, is extremely difficult. So much so that some people argue that is not value that effort, in particular because there is no world political authority that can set a poverty line and use it and the poverty policies. We lack that opportunities that exist at the national level to come to some sort of political agreement on what is a useful definition of poverty. In particular, market exchange rates make the poor countries appear too poor relative to the rich ones, compared with real difference in their living standards. The problem is that market exchange rates are determined by supply and demand of imports and exports. An indicator is an instrument that provides information on a certain condition or the achievement of a certain situation, activity, or result. An indicator must necessarily represent a relationship between variables. The characteristics that a good indicator has are four, which are that it be measurable, comparable, timely, and reliable. Some indicators of poverty are current income per capita, educational backwardness, access to food, access to health service, access to social security, access to basic housing service, quality and space in housing, degree of social cohesion. The methodology for measuring poverty measures therefore income and social deficiencies. Types of poverty. Before we start talking about the types of poverty, we must understand that they are the different ways in which it can manifest itself based on different measurements or metrics. We proceed to develop the different types of poverty that, based on their characteristics, occur in the world. Social poverty. Social poverty refers to the fact that poverty, regardless of the type of poverty it is a situation or a social condition on the population in which it occurs. Poverty shows the inability of certain members of society to access certain resources. In the sense, it is a social condition to the fact that we are referring to a society as well as the place that people are happy in it. Another type of classifying poverty is depending on the measurement used. 1. Absolute poverty. It is defined as poverty that is below minimum threshold of established resources based on uniform criteria. 2. Relative poverty. Relative poverty is defined as poverty that is below a relative poverty threshold. 3. Structural poverty. Structural poverty or chronic poverty refers to a type of poverty in which there is a deficiency in society on infrastructure and income. 4. Conjunctural poverty, term poverty. Short-term poverty in this sense is that poverty that bases its measurement on the measurement of monetary poverty and a period of time, depending on the geographical area. Here we can have two forms, the rural and urban. The rural poverty is a type of poverty that is shown great frequency in a large number of countries, while the urban poverty is the type of poverty that occurs in cities, urban areas, depending on whom and who it affects. Extreme poverty, poverty. Extreme poverty is now at the condition in which a family finds itself with a series of deficiencies that prevent it from participating in all the social activities of the community. Child poverty, poverty. Child poverty is named for the fact that it refers to the poverty that affects part of the group of boys and girls. Child poverty is considered until the boy or girl turns 16 age at which you can enter the labor market. Material poverty. Material poverty is a type of poverty that occurs when the people who suffer it do not have access to a series of material elements. In this sense, elements such as schooling, income, literacy, employment, among others. Countries more poverty of war. It is easy to say that these countries are the poorest, but you really know why that. Isn't you know something? You are lucky to be where you are. Believe me, many would like to live a life like yours. I am going to tell you which are the three poorest countries of the world. 1. Burundi. Burundi is the poorest country in the world, as it has the lowest GDP per capita on the planet, approximately $275.48 or 230 euros. This African country has 11,215,578 inhabitants. It has a debt of 170 million euros, which is equivalent to 38.06% of its GDP. The inhabitants of the country are facing an humanitarian crisis with a serious economic deterioration, extreme food insecurity, and as if that were not enough, they are currently also suffering from a malaria epidemic. According to data from the FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, 7 out of 10 households in this country have difficulty getting a daily meal, and 2 out of 10 households I spent several whole days without eating. 2. Malawi is one of the poorest countries in the world. It is a country that depends on financing from other donor countries and in which more than half of its population still lives below the poverty line on less than $1 a day. 3. Eritrea. Eritrea is a small northeastern country in Africa, surrounded by the larger Somalia, Ethiopia, and Sudan. It is home to nearly 5.4 million individuals, of which about 65% live in poverty. Eritrea's harsh historic coupled with its low rates of development has contributed to the poor economic conditions that oppress so many. Some facts about poverty in Eritrea are a tumultuous history with Ethiopia, cultural superstitions, prevent sanitary practices, limited access to clean water for rural Eritreans, challenges in agriculture, susceptibility to drought, how to help poor people. We have already briefly seen the poorest countries now. How can we help the poorest people? Well, certainly you have seen many pages where you can help with donations, either monetary or with food products. But it's just I want to contribute from my point of view. You need to start with the people close to you to really make a change. Let's face it, there's no perfect way to help the poorest people, and we don't have a magic. Want to make the poor less poor? Everything is hard and constant work, and as I said at the beginning, we do not decide where to be born. We saw that the place we inhabit influence science based on it are the products or service that we can have at hand. If you have a person who needs you and you can help him to eat. Poverty is not only about economics. They say that money buys happiness, and I really don't. I think so. Being poor is not only not being able to buy what you need to survive. It is also related to your person if you do not have that desire and motivation to be better. Saying I do something for others, you are poor in mind and perception. You are poor when you are not able to understand the situation in which you find yourself and you do not want to look for solutions. And you're even poorer for not trusting your human capacities that are incredible as you have no idea. Because poverty is only in the mind, you are as capable as any other human being to get ahead and enrich your mind and physical well-being every day, if only as I told you. You change your mentality. You know that the mind is the most powerful tool you have. Perhaps the panorama you face is discouraging, but if you make an effort, you will stop being immersed in the poverty that only hurts you. Thanks you very much for listening to this topic of poverty. I think there are always ways to say it. This way mine, I hope it has not been so unfavorable. If you have something to tell me, just write in the comments. I hope that today's poverty listens to the voice of those who hope to get out of it. See